Yeah, I think we're live now. All right, what's up, guys?
All right.
Welcome back. It's championship week, the S&S College Football Podcast. Tonight, it's going to be Addison and I hosting, as we have been for like the last 11 weeks. Steele is a dad now, so it's kind of hard for him to get on the pod live. Corey from Denver is still in Denver, so it's going to be kind of tough to get him on. Next weekend, I believe maybe Addison, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be Selection Sunday. We might be doing a pod with David from New Orleans, so that'll be exciting. If that's the actual day that we're doing that on, it might
Probably.
be whenever he's in town. But for the next podcast, I think we'll have him on. But it is championship week, so we've got a lot to talk about. There's some playoff scenarios and stuff to talk about as far as that goes. So, Addison, do you just want to get into the games and give predictions and then talk about scenarios, or how do you want to do it? We didn't really talk about this beforehand, so you guys are kind of seeing the pre-show production meeting right now in person as I drink my classy wine for championship week too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we should just go through the games.
Okay. Do we just want to do like the
The
power,
games that matter, I guess, right?
like
I
the
mean,
Power Five stuff, basically?
yeah, the Power Five conferences.
Pac-12 games on Friday night, so you just want to start with that.
Yeah,
Like that matters, but so the line is 4, right? USC is -4 against Stanford.
-4. Yeah,
They played earlier this year, correct?
yeah. It was week 2 actually.
Who won? Wasn't it
It
SC?
was USC won by 10. It was 41-31, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, they pulled away, or no, it was 42-24. A lot wider margin than I thought. I'm pretty sure I picked Stanford in that game too.
I think I probably did too, to be honest. I could see myself taking Stanford in the points and then just getting rocked by USC. So, how do
Yeah.
you see the game going?
-4. I would. Well, I like all the favorites in these power conference games this week, so I would take USC
It's very
-4.
unlike you to like all the favorites, as we already said.
Yeah, it is weird for me. So, besides the fact that Ohio State's one of them, but
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I don't think Stanford is like. I mean, they're good, obviously, but
No, they're not.
they
USC's
don't
gonna
do
kill
enough
them.
for me.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a one-man team, so
Yeah.
USC is playing well right now. I think USC covers.
Yeah, I don't think USC's anything special as far as I don't think they're a playoff team, but they are playing better. It seems like Darnold's playing better, and like you said, Stanford is pretty much a one-man show. He is still a little dinged up, I think. Didn't really matter much against Notre Dame, but they got put turnovers created really short fields for Stanford, and that really flipped the game pretty much. So I think that line's good up to 7, actually, to be honest. I think USC.
Yeah, I agree with
I
you.
think it's a pretty easy cover for USC, and I don't think. I mean, albeit the like the super chaotic scenario, I just don't see a Pac-12 team getting in this year. So I don't really have
Yeah,
anything else to
I've
say.
paid less attention to this because I don't think it's going to matter. Although, interestingly, I was looking earlier tonight, the 538 predictor
Yeah.
thinks that USC has a better chance than Alabama of getting in if they win, which I thought was very surprising.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't been
Yeah.
playing around with that too much, just because I don't know. I just kind of figured as a Buckeye fan, I was gonna root for Ohio State, and then whatever happens happens on Sunday at noon. So, but yeah. So all right, we both like USC. Um, let's move on to I guess the Big 12 game, which does have implications for sure with Oklahoma. The line, I think, is at 7.5 now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's been either 7 or 7.5 every time I see it.
Okay, and I think most of the bets have been on Oklahoma, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The only favorite that's not the public play this week is Wisconsin, I think,
Of course, yeah.
and that was surprising to me actually. It might have something to do with like JT's injury or something.
Yeah, and it could be like just the OSU haters too, or people just see like maybe an undefeated Wisconsin team and they're just kind of rolling with them in the points. People love to take the higher ranked team and the points a lot of times without knowing a whole lot about football. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. But I am.
Well, anyway, back to the Big 12.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fuck Wisconsin. We'll get to that. So, actually, well, why don't you start with how you think the game's going to go and why and all that. I'm going to actually see if we got a couple people that might want to call in. So you just go ahead and then I'll go after you.
Yeah, what's funny about a lot of these games is clearly we have a lot of rematches. So Ohio State's the only one that's not, I think, right?
Yeah, I think
Miami Clemson.
Yeah, Miami Clemson going to play, yeah. Good for Miami.
So, I mean, USC won in a blowout, Oklahoma won in a blowout, and Auburn won in a blowout. So, I mean, the question is, what's going to be different this time around in all these games? I mean, in this one, I don't know. Oklahoma, I don't see it being too much different. I mean, maybe closer. Oklahoma won 38-20 last time.
You think OU covers, though, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. I think OU wins. I don't think they cover, actually. I like Patterson in this spot. And the thing that holds me back a little bit, like, I wouldn't be surprised if OU stomped these guys because Baker's been really good this year, obviously. And TCU has been really good defensively, but Kenny Hill has a knack for big turnovers in bad spots. I think that could be a problem. But if he plays well and he doesn't turn the ball over, TCU's got a good shot to actually pull a little bit of a shocker. I don't think they win the game, but I think this game is definitely, for me, within a score. But we both have Oklahoma moving on, which means that they make the playoff then. So
I don't think TCU can keep up with Oklahoma. They're going to have to put up a lot of points to win.
Sure, yeah. So we both have Oklahoma in the playoff then. Now, I guess we can get into – maybe we should get into, like, the scenarios after we do all the predictions because if TCU wins, that's some kind of crazy shit. So let's move on to – I guess let's just do our game. You know, Wisconsin – for all the shit that they get about playing nobody and we don't know anything about Wisconsin, on the other hand, you could say that we don't know anything about Wisconsin. They might be really good. Now, the eyeball test, the metrics, I think it points to them being like a good team. I don't think maybe necessarily a top 4 team, but they have a chance in a one-game scenario now for the Big Ten to prove people wrong, I think, and to get themselves in the playoff. And if they were to play well in the playoff, then obviously we all will look stupid. But for me, I guess I'm just going first. I think that Wisconsin hasn't played a top 50 offense all year, okay? And Ohio State has been a little inconsistent, but for the majority of the year, they've been really good on offense, and they have been pretty explosive. The addition of Weber being healthy has really helped the running game, even though it didn't need help. It just needed somebody to call the game correctly, in my opinion. But I think Wisconsin's going to struggle to keep up. I think we're really going to put them – the thing is, if Ohio State can start fast, Wisconsin will be in a tough spot. If this game's close to the end, there's some things that concern me as a Buckeye fan. One is it Fumagalli, the tight end for Wisconsin?
Yeah.
He's really good. We have been struggling to cover tight ends. We traditionally, under Urban Meyer, have struggled with offenses that are very run-heavy as far as, like, showing run to, like, you know, if they, like, say they run, like, a stretch play to the right and then bootleg and hit fullbacks and tight ends. We've been really notoriously bad at covering that kind of stuff. I also think sometimes we're prone to giving up some yardage to, like, big, powerful running teams. So
yeah, I agree with that. Like
I actually,
Iowa.
Yeah. So I do think that
they didn't really. I mean, they didn't really like gash us or anything, but they did what they had to on the ground.
Right, and so I think Wisconsin actually is in this game for pretty much all of it. But with the line being 6, it's just a numbers play for me. I'm going to take OSU, and I'm actually betting them for the first time since the Oregon national title game because I just have a feeling that OSU, when we have to show up to play, besides like, I guess the Clemson game last year, but for the most part under Urban, this team usually responds well, and I feel like that just being a numbers game, I'm going to take them because I think that's most days when these two teams play, I think OSU is actually more like a 10-point favored, and I think when they're on their A game, they're possibly better than that. What gives me a little reservation is, when I have reservations about this, is just that we're just so inconsistent. And I mean, if we lay an egg, then they're going to stomp us. So I don't think that's going to happen, though. I do think we're going to show up to play and we're going to cover and win by like 10 points. So go ahead with your expert analysis, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. Of course, I take the point since I mentioned I like all the favorites. It's anywhere from it's 6 right now. I think still, maybe it's down to 5.5 now, but
yeah,
money's been going in on Wisconsin, which is surprising to me.
Yeah.
As far as Wisconsin, there's a good chance this is the biggest game in their history, or at least for a good 50, 60 years. You know,
I think it's their biggest game because I mean it's the closest that I think they've gotten to playing for a title shot.
National championship in 1910 or something. I don't know, but
doesn't count.
They've never been this close. You know, as long as in our lifetime. So it's going to be huge for them. It's a experienced team, especially on defense.
Right. I think they're well coached too. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. It's a much better version of Michigan, really. Solid D. Shaky quarterback, but good running game. So
I think Chris is a better coach than Harbaugh, in my opinion. I think he puts them in a better position on offense to be successful, even with the lack of explosion, I guess is what you want to call it. And then Jim Leonard, of all the fucking people, he's been really good as defensive coordinator. He played under both the Ryans, I think, in the NFL for a while, to where they have these really complex blitzing schemes, but it doesn't get out of hand to where it's too complicated. It seems like they know what they're supposed to do. They fly to the ball. That could be an issue where with JT getting his knee scoped on Sunday, I really question – I don't question that kid's heart. I never will. But I question him playing if he can't run like he usually can. Because if he's just going to be sitting duck in the pocket – then I think that could be a problem with some complex schemes where he tends to hold the ball when it's not there, and so that could be something that could be a nightmare scenario for us if he.
Well, I hope that if they realize during the game or he realizes during the game that he's too hurt to play and he's holding us back, that we will actually pull him.
Right.
Because that's a question. We'll see how he holds up.
Real quick break in the conversation. Steele will not be able to join us tonight. He says, though, to tell the followers of the pod that Wisconsin is bad, and that's why Ohio State will win. And then he said Clemson will crush Miami.
Didn't he pick Wisconsin?
I don't know.
I thought he took the points.
I mean, maybe he took them just because. I mean, maybe he means they're bad, they can't win, but they'll cover, I guess. I don't know how that makes sense, but
I don't
know. Whatever. So, yeah. But anyway, so we both have Ohio State winning, and we'll get into whether we think they make the playoff or not. But so far,
I think that Ohio State needs to. I guess we'll get into that later as far as playoff talk.
Yeah. So far we've been unanimous with both of our picks. SEC title game, interesting game.
Yeah.
Big time implications with this game. Auburn, the last time they played Georgia, smoked them. Auburn smoked Alabama. So, I mean, Auburn, you could argue, is playing the best football of anybody at the end of the year right now. How do you see the game going?
Well, I mean, it'll be closer than last time. At least you would hope it would be.
You would think
right?
It would be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, these teams on paper should be a lot closer, and a lot of people think that Georgia is actually, according to metrics, the better team.
Right.
Which is why even though Auburn won by 30-plus points last time, the spread is only 2 right now.
Sure.
Which makes the line kind of fishy,
It's weird.
Yeah. I mean, I took it anyway. I took Auburn.
I mean,
I do think they're the better team, and it's under a field goal, so.
Yeah, if you're going to play just like the numbers game, you can't take Georgia at 2, I think, unless you just think they're absolutely going to win the game. I got Georgia at 3, and I took Georgia at 3 because I think they're a little more even than I think what you think. And so if I think they're basically like an even team, I'm just going to take the points, obviously, on a neutral field. I also think, I don't know if the whole revenge factor is overplayed as far as a team playing a team from the year before, but within a 4-week span, Georgia's going to be fucking pissed. And so as much as I didn't like how they got handled on both lines, I'm kind of thinking in my mind that might have just been like a one-game thing where they just got kind of shell-shocked at Jordan-Hare. Neutral game, Georgia's going to have a lot of guys. I mean, they'll have 50% of the stadium, so it's going to be like a bowl game pretty much. But I actually like Georgia to pull off a little bit of an upset. And I just think it's one of those things where they come out ready to play. These teams are pretty even. I think it's been a kind of a crazy year, and I'm just going to roll with that theme. And so I have Georgia winning and getting into the playoff. You have Auburn winning and getting into the playoff.
Yeah.
So
I also took the under at 48.
That's probably a good bet. Auburn might be without.
Yeah, I just see.
Auburn's without what's his name, Johnson, right? Tailback.
Are they?
I think they are. Could be kind of interesting.
I don't know if he was out for sure.
I don't know for sure, but I thought I heard he was possibly out. I mean, he got hurt. He got dinged up pretty good in that last game that they played against, what was it, Bama? Yeah. So, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn obviously won. I mean, they're playing good football. I think my question for you is, let's say Georgia wins. Do you think that hurts Alabama getting in since Alabama's loss is to then an Auburn team that's not the champion? Because I think the thing is, like, I've heard people say that, but then OSU, they're saying, would get in over Bama, but OSU has, like, one of the worst losses you could have this year as far as a playoff contending team. So
I've heard that theory, and I think it's kind of stupid.
Yeah, like, it doesn't make sense.
I don't think that is going to be the tiebreaker for the committee if they're that close between Bama and Ohio State getting in.
Right.
Like, because Georgia beat Auburn, now we're going to put Ohio State in?
Right.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So I don't really like that theory.
Do you think, so from what the committee said, Holcutt or whatever on TV on Tuesday, he said that teams 5 through 8, there's not really much of a separation between them. That's Alabama to Ohio State, right? So he also said that
he left out, and that's leaving out TCU and USC then.
Right, and so I don't know if it was kind of cryptic with how he said it, but he then said a conference championship is a major factor in separating teams. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, and obviously I would be happy if that's the message he's sending, is that if Ohio State takes care of business, it sounds like they're going to get the 4th spot whether they're deserving or not. How do you, when it's all said and done, how do you see it playing out? Who do you have in the playoff? Our SEC picks don't really matter, I don't think. So we both have Oklahoma in, right?
Yeah.
We both have the SEC champion in. And then we have Clemson. Oh, we haven't gotten to that game yet, I guess. But
yeah. Well, let's measure it real quick.
Yeah.
Because we all agree that there's a good chance Clemson smokes them. So
I think
there's
Clemson
not really much else to
beats
say.
Miami by 21-plus points, to be honest. So I don't really have my reason for it. If you guys want any kind of analysis, is Miami still to this day struggles to move. They don't move the chains consistently. I don't think Clemson's going to give up the huge plays that Miami has benefited from. Bryant seems to hold on to the ball, or at least protect it pretty well. Like, I don't think Miami's going to get another +4 in the turnover margin. So I think once all said and done, we're going to see the real Miami in this game, and I think Clemson's just going to smother them and just wear them down and end that. And so I have Clemson in the playoff as the 1 seed.
Yeah, Clemson -10.
Easy, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say, yeah.
I mean, I haven't officially picked it or anything
right.
Yet, that's what I would take.
Okay, so let's say Clemson, Oklahoma, and the SEC winner are in. Who gets in your opinion, Ohio State or Alabama?
It's pretty close to a coin flip, and today Vegas, when they released the odds of yes or no, will these teams make the playoffs, Alabama was actually minus 115 for both yes and no, so they basically said it is a coin flip.
Yeah.
It's actually, Bama's been, yes for Bama has been bet down a little bit now, I saw. But if I had to bet on it, I would pick Ohio State, honestly.
Yeah, as I've said all year.
I can say why. I can say that the conference championship will just give us the boost that we need to get in.
It sounds.
Although,
yeah,
we have no idea if the committee is going to see it that way or not. You know, Bama lacks big wins,
right.
And they lost their last game of the season. That's never a good thing.
Right.
You know, timing of the losses does matter, even though you can argue whether it should.
Well, I think the argument is teams get in. I think teams at the end of the year, when they look really hot and playing well, I think that does matter because I guess a team has improved to the point where they are better. I mean, look in March Madness. Like, bubble teams that get in, they're usually playing really well to end the year. They don't put in teams that are 1-9 in their last 10 and are on the bubble. They never do that. And people just you get that human, like, you get the emotions involved. You get, everything's real subjective. But at the end of the day, it's not a computer that's deciding all this. It's guys in a room that. Well, let me ask you this: Do you think Ohio State's margin of victory matters at all? Do you think if they smoke Wisconsin, that definitely helps them more than if they win like in overtime?
Yeah, margin.
I mean, that's what got them in 14. I think, to be honest.
Some people think that we need to win big. I don't necessarily think that. I think we just, first of all, we need to just focus on winning because I think it'll be a tough game anyway. If we win big, I would feel pretty good about our chances. Like, to me, it's no longer a coin flip at that point. It's not something that we need to do, though.
Right.
It would definitely help.
Yeah, that's something that I hope. I would not expect any scenario where our coaches are like, look, you guys need to go out and pound these guys, because then they start not playing within themselves, and I think that's when Wisconsin wins the game. So if they just show up just to play ball, win the Big Ten championship.
Especially since Wisconsin knows that all they have to do is win.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter how they win. They could be outgained by 500 yards and get +5 in the turnover margin. If they win the game, they're in the game or in the playoffs. So I think it really is like a coin flip. But the way that Holcutt made it sounds like Ohio State has a slight edge. And I do think it matters how they look against Wisconsin as far as, let's say they win that game like 35-10. They look really good. They just look like the superior team. I think that does matter. And I think Ohio State would get that 4th spot and probably play Clemson, which could be an interesting rematch. And hopefully it's not similar to last year. But
yeah, there are a lot of possible rematches in this playoff, no matter who goes.
Right.
From games within the past year. It's kind of interesting. You could see Ohio State, Clemson,
right.
Ohio State, Oklahoma,
Auburn,
Clemson.
Yeah, right.
Auburn, Bama. I mean, there's a ton. So
yeah.
A lot of teams that are going to be, kind of familiar with each other. So that's interesting.
Yeah. So I guess, do we think, is there like any scenario where like TCU can get in? Or USC gets in? I mean, I know we talked about that a little bit last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago. But, I mean, I think TCU their best win, I think, is Oklahoma State, and that's the only win that they have besides this rematch game with Oklahoma. So, I don't know. How do you feel about them? Do you think they have any realistic shot if they beat Oklahoma?
TCU winning would set up the most interesting possibility, I think.
Do you think OSU and Bama both get in if TCU wins?
No, I don't think. Well, what would happen there? We might both get in.
So let's say
right. Be crazy.
So let's say Clemson takes care of business, right? They're in, and then let's say Auburn wins, they're in. TCU and Ohio State win, so you have 2-loss Big 12 champion TCU. You have 2-loss Big 10 champion Ohio State. Let's say USC wins. You have 2-loss Pac-12 champ USC. And then
2-loss Oklahoma who beat us.
Right. 2-loss Oklahoma who beat us but doesn't have the conference championship. And then you have 1-loss Alabama, who in everybody's mind, even though they have a bad resume, it's still Alabama. I mean, who goes in that scenario? Who are the 2 teams out of all those teams that go?
It's crazy. You've got a ton of possibilities there. I could see them just saying, I thought about this actually, like in 2014, with the situation with Baylor and TCU, it was kind of like they didn't know which team to put in, so they were just like, fuck the Big 12. Let's just leave them all.
Let's just put Ohio State in. Yeah.
So that I could see them doing that, and TCU and Oklahoma both getting left out.
Yeah.
TCU would definitely have a case. Oklahoma would have a case too, just because they beat us.
Yeah, so, I agree. Yeah. I think what would happen, in my opinion, and I mean, guys, this isn't like an expert opinion or anything. This is just literally my opinion. If TCU beats Oklahoma and all the other scenarios play out as we said, I think it'll be Clemson, Auburn, Ohio State, and I think it'll be the first year that you get 2 teams in from a conference, and I think Bama does get in. I
agree. That's probably what I'd say would happen,
but who knows, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? It's a crazy year, man. I mean, it's now having said that, let's say Wisconsin wins, Clemson wins, Auburn wins, Oklahoma wins, then it's not really that crazy. Like, it was crazy for a while, but then it becomes kind of simple at the end, but it never seems simple in college football. And this year it would be really strange for it to not end chaotically somehow. So
what does USC need? Does USC need to pull an Ohio State 2014 and just, beat Stanford like 59-0? Do they have a chance in that scenario?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think that's the only way that they have a shot, really.
I think the Pac-12 has just been so disrespected that, like, I just feel like they're just out anyway. Like, it's interesting because Ohio State, I don't know. I feel like the Big Ten gets more respect than the Pac-12, whether they should or not this year.
Well, one of the things that helps the Big Ten is that Penn State's a respected team that Ohio State had to beat to get to this spot.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Wisconsin is undefeated.
And whether I was going to say,
doesn't have anyone else in the Pac-12 really to prop them up this year.
Right. And I don't know. I think, what's funny is when they've showed the resumes, USC actually has a pretty good resume. It actually on paper looked better to me than Ohio State's. So I don't know. Maybe
I think the Pac-12 just lacks meaningful out of conference wins.
Yeah.
I
agree.
That shapes the perception of the conference for the rest of the year. So,
well, it doesn't help that USC. Right. Well, I guess that fits into what you said because USC got stomped by Notre Dame. So I mean, that doesn't help them. Now at the same time, we're talking about an OSU team that could get in with a 31-point loss to Iowa. So I really don't know how far down the criteria list bad losses are. That's the main thing is if we get a scenario where it's OSU versus Bama, the majority of the room, it's whether they think that the Iowa loss, like whether bad losses or how high is that in their criteria. Do they say, well, we've got Alabama, Ohio State, they're pretty much a coin flip. And then the very next thing is, do they just mention right away, well, Ohio State lost by 31 to Iowa? If that's the first thing that's talked about in that room and they all agree on that, then Alabama's in. There's nothing to talk about. But
I think in a typical SEC year, Bama is pretty much a lock.
Yeah, I agree. But they suck as a conference.
The SEC was down. The SEC was down.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, Bama didn't play Georgia, and they lost Auburn. So that the 2 best possible resume, boosters in the SEC for Bama, they didn't beat.
Right.
And then besides that, there were a lot of mediocre at best teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Here's
Florida State sucking also really hurt Bama
a lot. Yeah, that was supposed to be like a big out-of-conference game for them, obviously. And Florida State, when they lost that game and they lost Francois, and we've talked about that throughout the year, they just quit. And, like, it's almost like Jimbo's about to quit on this team and jump ship to a worse program, in my opinion. I don't know why the hell he would go to A&M. It makes no sense to me. I don't get it. But
yeah, he used to talk about how much he loved this group of players he has.
Right.
And now it's just kind of all falling apart.
I feel like, do you think – I think it's definitely – I don't even know if I'd say possible, but maybe probable that there's some stuff going on between him and, like, the boosters or the AD. Like, it just doesn't make sense to leave Florida State to go to A&M. It just doesn't make sense to me. It's a step down, big step down in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah,
I mean, it'd be like Urban going to Michigan State, in my opinion. I mean, it's, yeah, right.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
What happens, let's say, what happens if Miami beats Clemson?
I think Clemson's out for sure, and Miami's in.
I've read some stuff that people think Clemson could get in, and I was like, I don't think that's the case.
No, I think that is. I think it's a de facto quarterfinal. I think the SEC is a de facto quarterfinal.
Yeah.
And the Big 12, not really, because we don't know what happens if TCU wins. But
right.
And then the Big 10, there's a good chance that it is. So.
Right. So to recap our picks, basically, who we think makes the playoff. Addison, you had Auburn, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Ohio State, right?
Yeah.
And then I had the same playoff, except I had Georgia instead of Auburn. So we basically have the SEC winner and then those 3 conference champions getting in. So because we said that, TCU's probably going to win. Wisconsin's probably going to win. I mean, there's probably going to be some chaos or something. But no, I mean, I actually think Ohio State's going to beat Wisconsin, like I said. But I think – okay, so I've got to interrupt the pod. I've got some picks from Brian from Sunbury, my father. He has Clemson beating Miami. He's got Oklahoma beating TCU. He has Georgia beating Auburn. In a shocker, he has Wisconsin beating Ohio State. He says Ohio State will not stop the tight end for Wisconsin, and they will run on us. And then he has USC winning the Pac-12. So it looks like his playoff would be Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, Wisconsin then. I'm surprised he picked Wisconsin, but I mean, the things that we said that could be concerning are the things that he pointed out. So that's he obviously knows the Big Ten pretty well, and I think he's wrong about his prediction, but obviously it's not that outlandish. Wisconsin's a 12-win team. They're very well coached. I wouldn't be super shocked if they beat Ohio State, but I don't see it happening. I just don't see this being the year where they take that step forward. So is there anything else we want to discuss as far as like these games or the playoff scenarios? Do you want to mention do you want to talk about like UCF Memphis? That game's going over, by the way. I don't care if it's a Joe pick or not.
No, I don't really want to talk about them.
Okay,
Something that I think might be worth talking about is we were talking earlier in the week, and we've talked about this before a little bit.
About expansion?
What are your thoughts on possible future expansion of the playoffs?
I mean, I made it pretty clear.
Maybe 6 teams, maybe 8 teams.
Yeah.
What do you see happening, and what would you think if that were to happen?
I think when the contract is up, they absolutely...
What do they have? Do they have 2 more cycles of the current bowl setup?
I think it's like 2025, I think. I'm not exactly sure about that.
This is the start of the next cycle, and I think they've got 2 more, so that'd be maybe they have 3 more. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it was a 12-year deal, right?
Yeah. So what I think will happen is I think it's going to at least 8 teams no matter what. There's too much money to be made in the playoff. Too much money to be made with sponsorships, partnerships, and stuff like that. Money drives everything, even in amateur sports, which is unfortunate. What I think should happen is I don't think they should expand from 4. If they went to 6 and had a first-round bye for the top 2 seeds, I wouldn't be opposed to that if you did like auto bids for the conference champions, or like maybe some kind of scenario like that. But I agree with Corey from Denver where like it's annoying each year that we don't know the weight value of a conference championship. It seems like every year there's like kind of one criteria that was like higher the year before is now lower the next year, and something else that was lower the year before is now higher. And I don't like the inconsistency. I would like for the committee to kind of come up with like a system to where they're like, okay, this is weighted number one. This is what we go by. This is the next thing. Like I want like a consistent system to where we don't have to every year be like, well, Frank Beamer joined the committee this year. Does he view who you lost to higher than your important wins and stuff like that? You know what I'm saying? So like,
yeah, I mean, I don't like subjectivity.
Right.
It'd be nice if they could just make it like, if you're a conference champ, then you automatically go.
Yeah.
I think one of the big reasons, well, there's not enough teams for them to do that right now anyway, but
sure.
The conference championship games, like themselves, are not the perfect, determinant for the, conference champion, really, because a team with a worse record can win the.
Right. Having a little technical difficulties here, I think. You still there? I think my internet's being a dick right now.
No, it's total. It's like situations like that where the I kind of like the idea of 6.
Yeah.
I would be all right with that. I don't really like 8. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, it's just kind of, you're frozen on the screen, but I can hear you. We're having technical difficulties. So, hey guys, so we had some technical difficulties, as you can obviously see, but Addison and I were talking about playoff expansion, how we think that's bad. So, Addison, I don't remember if you kind of know where you left off or if you want to finish your thought, but I had mentioned that I see it going to 8 teams, but I think that would be really bad, and I'll get more into that when you finish with your thoughts now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I agree with you that it'll probably expand, like you said, because of money. But also, if Alabama misses it this year, there's going to be a lot of calls for it to be expanded because everyone's going to think that Bama has to be included,
Yeah, I think that's definitely a reasonable thought.
I always liked the idea of a 14 playoff, and I think to me, it's perfect. I think that a good playoff should be exclusive. Like, there should be some good teams that get left out. It should be really hard to make the playoff.
Yeah.
Before, when it was 2 teams, the thing about 4 teams is I think that that's enough. Like, the bigger you get, the more likely it is that the best team doesn't end up winning the championship. With 4, you still have.
Yeah, it's like a cream, like a cream rises to the top type of thing.
Right. Yeah. With 4, you're going to have the best teams in there. I don't really feel that bad for number 5.
Yeah.
I used to for like teams like 3 or 4 in the BCS system because there was no way that you could split hairs with those teams and figure out who should be there.
Sure.
With 5, I have a lot less sympathy, I guess.
Well, that's my argument with the 18 playoff is we're gonna have the same damn argument for like teams 8, 9, and 10. I mean, do we really want to be arguing like these 3-loss teams that are not even in their conference title games? I mean, that's I think we're really getting really close to the NFL at that point, and that's what I think has always separated college football is the regular season has mattered so much, and like we've talked about in the last few weeks of the year, a lot of these games are pretty much de facto playoff games anyway. And
I mean, a lot of them are literally
right, and so like correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying it can't be a factor, but let's say like OSU, Oklahoma this year, and Auburn and Clemson early in the year, both those games. If it's an 18 playoff, do those games really matter that much? I mean, if you lose that game, you're thinking to yourself, well, whatever. If I win probably most of the rest of my games, and in some years I even have another loss I can probably give, I don't really think that makes the playoff better, in my opinion. And I think, like you said, you're starting to let teams in that I mean, quite frankly, have no business playing for a national title.
You'll get 3 lost teams in there for sure.
Right. I mean,
having only 2 losses, more often than not, will get you in the playoff.
Yeah.
I don't really like that. Corey mentioned something that I totally agree with this week, that if they were to expand, they should get rid of the conference championship games. But I know that they would never do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he's right, but there's just obviously too much money in those, and they'll never go away. So,
yeah, the problem with it would be that you've got teams in the conference championships that would deserve to go, but then could get knocked out because they're playing in the conference championship.
Yeah, and I think,
for example, Penn State is number 9 this week. Say Georgia or Miami loses the conference championship, and then all of a sudden Penn State, who wasn't playing and won, now gets to go.
Yeah.
It'd just be weird scenarios like that.
Yeah, I think I kind of lost my train of thought, but I mean, yeah, I pretty much agree with all that. I mean, it's just I think the main point that you made is it's supposed to be really hard to get into the playoff, and it's never going to be a perfect system, but it's still better than the original system. It's better than the BCS. And I think we're getting to the point now where we keep looking for greener grass on the other side of the fence when we don't need to. And unfortunately, money is going to drive the business. I mean, it's probably, I don't have a number in my mind. I mean, I would assume it's $1 billion business, but do you think it's going to go to 8+ when we get to the end of this contract?
I hope it goes to 6, like you've talked about.
Yeah.
I think 6. I can live with that. I think 8 is where you really start to shake things up.
I think 6 is reasonable because I do think at that point in most years you can just say, well, we've got 4 conference champions, and then you're going to be arguing over the 2 at-larges, I guess. But
so, I mean, you could just say like 1 team from each conference and then 1 at-large,
Right.
With 5 conferences.
Right.
So I mean, that's reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, having 2 teams with byes gives a lot of incentive to take those top 2 spots,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, winning your conference title or not, or, if you can finish the year undefeated or with 1 loss or something, I think getting those bye weeks would be huge for those 2 teams. So, I mean, 6, I think is fine. I still think 4 is the best right now. And to be honest, the first 3 years, 4 has been pretty much perfect. And this is the first year that we've really had a lot more chaos than usual, but fans that are college football fans that are saying that, Ohio State shouldn't get in because they lost by 31 to Iowa, and I don't blame them for saying that. I kind of feel the same way. But if you go to 8 teams, then a lot of these teams that could get in, I mean, you could just literally not show up for a week and get in pretty much then. That's pretty much the case. Do you not agree with that?
No, yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, so I just think you really start to water it down, and it's not good for college football. It might be good for business, but it's not good for us as fans, and I think it would be bad. So,
yeah, a lot of teams would have already basically clinched going into this weekend, so there wouldn't be a lot to play for.
Yeah, it'd be really frustrating. So, I mean, Bama, that's a good example, is Bama would definitely get in without playing for the SEC title.
Wisconsin would have to be in, you would think.
They definitely...
Oklahoma would probably be a lock. Clemson would probably be a lock.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. All right, so we gave our picks. We gave... for the conference title games, we gave our playoff predictions. We gave some kind of alternate scenarios, some chaotic doomsday scenarios. I'm sure there's a couple that we didn't talk about that could happen, but it's going to probably take too long to get into everything. I think the most probable scenarios we've already covered, and then we discussed, expansion, whether that's good or not, and we gave our reasons for why we think that's bad. So, Addison, before I wrap it up, is there anything else you want to add?
Michigan.
Yeah, fuck Michigan. Beat Wisconsin. Go Bucks.
All right, bye.
Bye.